The gentleman walked in. He basically like almost hobbled in, limped in. He was been shot out of a helicopter twice, 4 knee replacement surgeries. Like when he sits down, he has to like turn around to help himself get up. Couldn't even turn his neck around, and sat him in there, let him relax. And in 10 minutes, he freaking stood up without helping himself. And he walked to the other side of my room and started to kind of like dance around. He's like, this is new, people. And him and I were in tears because I give chairs to so many people. When I see somebody directly affected by this, it moves me in a way that nothing has moved me before.
Welcome to the Uncommon Living podcast, where we host dialogues in human resilience. I'm Thomas Seager. I'm an associate professor in the School of Sustainable Engineering at Arizona State University and the CEO of the Morozko Ice Bath Company. My guests today are the founders of Solodome, Kris Cadle and Joshua Chaney. They've invented a chair that places the user at the center of a vibroacoustic therapy surround. It's great for listening to music or for watching a movie, but Kris and Josh have figured out those frequencies that will stimulate the mitochondria and calm the central nervous system.
I got to sit in your chair. Sean Drake demoed it for me, and it was a profound experience without anybody suggesting. And of course, I thought, hey, this would be a great way to watch a movie, because you're really inside the sound. And Josh told me that although he has a background in movies and he's got an interest in that application, that the really cool things that you can do with this chair are related to healing. And that's why I wanted to meet you and learn more.
So approaching all of this stuff, I've worked in audiophile production of design and manufacturing of audiophile equipment. In that study, all we did for 20 years was really focus on how sound affects the body and how we can get results and reproducible results by putting headphones on people, by putting really amazing speakers in front of people and having them listen to music. It was all to reproduce the same physical effects that were going on in the artist when they recorded the music. And that intent kind of ties to sound bath healers and Reiki people, when intent is this very big deal to them, but they might not look at it the same way as a songwriter does or as an audio engineer does. And so my main focus for many years was working in recording studios with when they really still used microphones and good microphones. And so I learned in the very best studios in the world from top people how to record and how to capture high fidelity signals, and then how to reproduce them when I went to work in R&D at Odyssey and these other places. And so that sort of pipeline of information where it's built on science and there's nothing that I'm going to say, oh, I have a feeling that this might do something, so I'm going to put it on my website. Being able to stay completely on the other side of the coin, saying, okay, here's some proven things in vibration therapy that stimulate cells, that cause them, those proteins actually do turn around and send signals to the inside of the cells, and using calcium ions and things like that. And so you can see that happening, and there's well-documented stuff that sound works that way. So
with that being said, Thomas, exactly what Kris is saying is why we kind of happily landed into the wellness space, because as I told you in our little meeting, Kris and I met and discovered that, hey, we could potentially make the best sounding, best quality audio chair in the world. So why don't we do that for ourselves? And Kris was like, okay, we'll do that. I'll make you and I the best chair in the world. And then we'll put a website up. And if anybody comes onto the website, great, we'll sell some chairs. But if not, you and I are going to have the best chair in the world. And then that kind of, fast forward, and I'll just get to some stories so he can get more on the science and why we created it. But it started with my personal assistant who had Parkinson's disease, and God bless his soul. We're on to some pretty amazing things, and seeing the effects that sound quality and sound the detail of real sound while sitting in front of a speaker or sitting inside our chair or in your car, and the real effects that it has just has been life-changing for Kris and I to see something that we've created for music and for movies really affect somebody on a cellular level.
The delivery system, the platform that we built in order to produce music, that becomes something like the headphones that they're using in a study to do sound therapy or something, or with Alzheimer's or any type of different thing. Those aren't standardized. They don't ever really say any of the specs of what they're using to deliver these sound waves, and so there's a huge gap in the information. If I were to bring it up and really explain it to you, you would have to say, well, shoot, now Stanford and MIT and all these people have to go back and redo all of their stuff. They missed a huge thing that really does draw into question the efficacy of their results. And if they were truly following real scientific method, they wouldn't have been able to do that. And so that's what I mean by, even at the top levels, the people that are doing stuff, they're unaware of what they're doing. They're just trying to publish these papers and get their grants and write their book. But none of that actually applies to our friend Robbie, who has Parkinson's. The book, you can't treat Parkinson's with a book. You have to actually build a mechanical device that does it. And right now, the only ones being applied, they're down at universities like UCLA and places where they do vibration therapy. And you can go in there and have someone do it to you, but you can't do that 3 times a day. And right now, there's just no way for you to do it at home. You can't vibrate your basal ganglia at 50 hertz, whether you want to or not. And so, because all this work has been done, chiefly in MRI studies. Years ago, I was able, again, just my fortunate, because I'm curious, I got to work with Dr. Pohost, who is the father of cardiac MRI. And he was down at Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital, where they have a fantastic MRI center. It's one of the top places in the world where they do cancer research and stuff. And so I got to go work with him directly, and he mentored me and taught me K-space and how Fourier transforms and how the entire MRI system works, how you image, how you get images from these things. And so I was the first one to build a real-time render engine for DICOM software coming from an MRI stream, so I could actually visualize. We saw the heartbeat for the first time, standing in my lab. So ever since then, having that sort of knowledge of how MRI data works and what you're getting from that data, it's not just for a picture. If you're a radiologist, you look at the picture completely different than me and Josh would, So because you have that information, you know what you're looking at, and being able to apply that to the work that we're doing in audiophile work, and now in the delivery systems for vibration, it's acoustic vibration therapy. You could think of it when you're using speakers instead of using a machine. You're basically just doing vibration therapy, but the way that we're doing it, we've developed new methods of doing it that I don't think anyone is really doing. And again, because when I look at the work that other people are doing, they're missing these huge gaps. They're recording things and compressing them to MP3s and playing them back off of a server like it's just, that's just normal. That's what we do, and that'll never work. Like you're wasting your time trying to do that. You're getting results that you could be getting really, really good results with your recordings and with the things that you're doing, but you're missing this one ingredient. And that's why we want to go on shows like this and talk to you and try to get the word out on how this stuff really works. And anyone who's doing research in it and wants to really do good work and wants people to buy their books because their methods are great and people are getting, if you want to get really, really good results, there's a few things you have to pay attention to. And these are things that might come from outside of would normally be the holistic medicine world, or the, just even the medical world, the highest level of the medical world. It's outside of their realm because they've never built a pair of speakers and they've never really had to really focus on sine waves and how it works. And so Anyway, I'm getting a little
You're passionate. I love it.
yeah, I'm into it. So the thrust would be to really try to evangelize fidelity to the community and say, what are you, when you're talking about cell modalities, what are you talking about? When you're talking about inflammation, or you're talking about muscle recovery and relaxing muscles after they've exercised, when you're talking about these things, what specifically are you talking about? What's going on in there, and what are you doing? So if I play something soothing for you and it relaxes your body, that's because you're hearing it. But what's going on inside the muscles? Or is there energy being transferred through the muscles into the cells? And is it causing those cell receptors to fire all of their internal coolness and do different things that they do that would actually be measurable in some real way by a kinesthesiologist who could look at that and go, oh, this is definitely doing this. No, it's not. And because people think that sound is just something that you hear. And it's not. It can be used as energy specifically, and it can be used very, very effectively throughout your body. For example, brainwave entrainment. Everyone knows about the gateway process and the Monroe Institute and these types of things that have been around for a very long time, with binaural beats being the way that they entrain your brainwaves to lower frequencies, 7 hertz or something like that. But your entire body is entrainable. Everything in all your cells are entrainable. That's what they do all day long, is they receive signals. And those signals are coming from stimuli from the outside world, just like your brain is.
Will you explain what is entrainment?
Oh, well, it's a kind of a phenomenon, I would say. If you have like an electroencephalogram and you put the little sticky pads on your cold parts of your head, and you were to turn it on and listen to the axions and the electrical signals firing inside your brain, in different parts of your brain, and you'll notice that, like, okay, they're at a specific frequency. They fire at a specific frequency. So then while you're doing that, if you were to put headphones on and you play like binaural beats, this is the common way of doing it, you can entrain those by, let's say, playing 2 offset frequencies. One is 100 hertz, one is 103 hertz. So if you put those on, you'll notice this steady beat, they call it. And it's just the cancellation and collapse and aggregation of standing waves from 2 different frequencies. But your brain doesn't entrain to, now it'll change the measurement that you see on the machine. It'll actually your brain will start to put out different, but it won't put out 100 hertz. It won't go to the carrier signal, actually. It'll go to the beat frequency. Your brain will start putting out 3 hertz by listening to this. And that's something that you can measure and do over and over, and everyone can try it. But
sounds like the internal frequencies of the body are synchronizing with the external frequencies to which the body is now immersed.
Yeah.
So by creating the right sound environment, you can change the way the body, the tempo of the body, so to speak. That is, I'm not sure what it is within the body that creates these frequencies in the first place. But if we're observing that those frequencies change so they can synchronize with the external stimuli, then there must be some mechanism that is creating those frequencies that is also changing. Can you teach me a little bit about that?
Well, that would be, my understanding of that would be coming from an evolutionary biology standpoint, that as organisms formed from single cell organisms all the way to complex life, and to us, which, I mean, let's just assume the Earth is round and that's how it happened. We can prove evolutionary biology in all sorts of ways, through simulations and through real experiments in the lab with yeast and things like that. So there's a pretty well understood, this is how survival works. You've got new guys, scientists coming out like Donald Hoffman. I don't know if you follow him. I love Donald Hoffman. Oh my gosh. He uses this in a whole new way. And so what they've proven is that your cells and your DNA and your genes, everything about life, seeks to optimize for fitness over truth. And so you're going to end up finding that groups of them, after they evolve for some time, the ones that are still there, a lot of them died off, and the ones that are still there, we're just optimizing with a fitness function, almost in a very simple way. So the hypothesis would be that if these electrical signals, like the nerves and the electrical signals in your body, travel at different rates. Your pleasure sensor, reward sensor nerves travel extremely slow. Your hearing, your auditory nerves travel extremely fast, an order of magnitude. There's people that could run faster than your pleasure sensor nerves fire when they go off in an axion chain. But your auditory system, when you hear something, sound bypasses the part of your brain where the rest of your senses go to, and it first goes to your motor controls, and it fires your muscles before your brain can cognitively realize that you were in a car accident. And there's all these things now where you can look at that. And so those speeds, the reason that those frequencies occurred would be like a PID or something that balances a system automatically based on temperature. These are things that evolved through evolutionary biology to just be that way, because if they were different, you died. Does that make sense? This is
Sure.
what's left after the filter of, and now that, this will blow your mind. All of that evolutionary biology took place on a planet that has an electromagnetic field that is affected by other stellar bodies and things like that. And so when you start looking at, does the moon have anything to do with your health? Well, yeah, because evolutionary biology evolved on a planet where the moon had to be there. And if it wasn't, your frequencies would be different. And so all of those feedbacks, your body needs to know that the moon is okay. Stuff like that. It's all tied together. We're all apples on one big apple tree, more than we are individual self-serving organisms. And so my only answer for that, my hypothesis would be evolutionary biology dictates the frequencies, and so that's where they come from.
I understand your evolutionary biology argument, the selection mechanisms that selected for this,
Yes.
but that doesn't explain the mechanisms. That is, all life is energy. It is a constant struggle against entropic decay. There is no life without the flow of energy through it. It's not that these special arrangements of atoms and molecules that constitute our body constitute our life. Our life is the flow of energy through those. A lot of people in biohacking circles are very concerned about red light and blue light, and everybody's getting into, the electromagnetic spectrum. I think that's wonderful. But you're working a little bit further out on sound. Sound is certainly energy, although it requires a medium through which to travel. We know that different frequencies of light will penetrate the body to different lengths. The longer wavelengths like red or infrared will penetrate further than the shorter wavelengths like, say, UV. But sound, I've experienced this. Sound can go straight through the whole body. What I think my audience doesn't understand is what changes inside the body when you are using sound to penetrate it and stimulate different aspects of the cells. I think if I remember your example with Robbie correctly, Joshua, you were saying that Robbie, because of his Parkinson's, was experiencing a disabling spasm. I think it was in his arm. And you put him in the chair, and you treated him with sound, and that spasm released so that he regained the control over his arm that was or at least relaxed his arm that had been locked up.
Yeah, Thomas, that day he was, for like 3 hours, he said he had been in a spasm and he wasn't able to release. And Kris had just finished up the night before with this app, well, that section of the app, I should say. And in 5 minutes of him sitting in the chair, man, the guy put his hands down to his side, and Kris and I were in tears. Robbie wound up falling asleep in the chair. I woke him up like 20 minutes later, and he looked at us and gave us a huge hug and was like, it was life changing. I mean, because look, like I said, we did not develop this for that. So the fact
Joshua, as a person who is naive to sound healing, I might say this. We all know that music makes us feel things. It doesn't, and it's not the lyrics, although the lyrics can be very powerful. Instrumentals can make us feel things. You know, I have a rule in my family for my kids. You're not allowed to listen to Pink Floyd alone. You know, that requires a buddy. And it's because the music will make us, it will create neurochemicals, neurotransmitters that correspond to certain feelings. And those feelings can be sad, or they can be elation. It's possible that what Robbie did was experience a dopamine hit from whatever music you were playing. There's certainly songs that give me a great dope hit, you know, and because we know Parkinson's is a dopamine receptive disorder, perhaps the dope hit that he got off the music, you know, relaxed that muscle spasm.
Well,
so
I
it
could
wasn't even music that was played for him. It was strictly a 55 hertz frequency that Kris coded, that would play, you know, through the subwoofer, that also Kris created. And then that would potentially vibrate him enough to shake his basal ganglia. So it wasn't music, because if it was music, it wouldn't have shaken his basal ganglia. It was the actual 55 hertz frequency. But Kris, you can speak more on that and the effects it had.
Yeah. So again, there's ample work that's already been done on not just MRI studies that talk about, that detail the density of the tissue of the human body. So all of the different tissue has all different densities. And in our app, that's what we've done now, develop that completely, where we've isolated those frequencies so that you can play certain frequencies that will stimulate the cells inside that range. And we use all kinds of techniques to do that, because you say, well, Kris, you're full of it, man. Like no speaker is going to put out 2.5 hertz. Okay. You're dreaming. So no, we use physics to produce 2.5 hertz standing waves. And we find that the range, the carrier signal for those is between 40 and 50 hertz, which that also has to do with the density of the tissue of your body. So we produce harmonic standing waves inside your body at the frequency that we want to affect the tissue of, similar to how a focused ultrasound would work, or even ultrasonic ablation works that way, where you really focus it. So that way you can actually decide how far into the body and what tissue you want to affect, and then you encode it into a 40 hertz waveform. And then we use multiple oscillators to collapse those at the standing wave frequencies. And so that ends up, so with Robbie, you know, I just read immediately everything I could get my hands on Parkinson's. What's the current research? And this was 3 or so years ago. And I know that every year there's new research, and he hadn't been in it. He's too depressed to look at any of it or read a medical journal in the first place. So the idea is there's already things being done, but they're not being applied to Robbie. They're not being applied to people all over the place. And you shouldn't have to go to UCLA to do vibration therapy on your basal ganglia and regain motor control over half of your body during an episode. You should be able to do that in your car, or on your stereo system, or wherever, even at a clinic down the street, where you can go to a lounge where they just do that for people. And then you get a social component with it. There's so much that hasn't been applied. I'm like, you do these research comes out and people write books and they move on, but nobody's really taking all of this information and just building things with it that other people have access to. And as soon as we started doing that, one after the other. Do you know how many Robbies there are out there, and how they all benefit from this stimulation of their cells, from being able to just whatever part of that cell it is, if you stimulate it, it's going to start doing healthy stuff. It's going to start to produce all of the things it's doing. It's going to do its thing, whether it's just producing more ATP or whatever you're trying to do.
And we're learning every day, the more the more type of disabilities or ailments or anything, that it is affecting. I mean, like, we just had a pediatric center contact us saying they've had a chair for 2 months and it's changed hundreds of children's lives. And the physicians are like, there's a schedule now to get into the room to use the chair. And she actually called us a couple days ago and was telling us that they had a child in there with low functioning temper tantrums, screaming.
How old?
I didn't ask the age, but they've been working with the child for about 4 months. Has to be younger than 7.
It's got to be 6 or 8 because
it's got to be like anywhere
to
between
fit
like
in our chair. We have a
5 to
kid's
8.
chair.
Yeah. So she said it was the first time in 4 months, Josh, we put him in the room and put him in the chair for the first time. And in less than a minute, he was completely calm, smiling. We were able to transition him out. She's like, I don't care what it is I have to do to be a part of getting this out there to every pediatric center in the world. She's like,
what happened inside that child's body that would cause the change in temperament?
Well, this is a stimulation child, a neurodivergent, somebody on this autism, heavy clinical autism, not spectrum, but a real physical autism diagnosis and low functioning. The chair is the perfect delivery system for any type of frequency work, even if it's music, because, and this is my again, a hypothesis, that why she's getting such good results with it is because there's a primitive primal effect that happens when you block off. It's a dome chair and you go inside this dome, and so it's all around you and it blocks off everything, and so there's the safety of the cave. There's a very relaxing feeling. Every single person that sits in there goes, whoa, you can't even hear anything outside. This is different. It's different.
Like a womb.
Yeah, it's a portable womb. And so you produce this, once you cut off all of the stimulation from your peripheral vision and you're just only, all of your cognitive focus is just right here, and your body knows you're safe. That itself, just in itself, as far as like an environment to apply some kind of therapeutic, that works. That's just a happy accident because the chair needed to be that shape because I drew the golden ratio and that's the perfect sound cancellation. So we got 20 dB of natural sound cancellation inside the chair. And so that's what
it looks like a lot like an enormous egg.
Yeah, eggs are that shape because that's the golden ratio. That's the whole point. So, and so I think that the shape of the chair itself is maybe a key factor in making it a delivery system for this type of thing, and that's a cognitive effect. It's not so much a physical body effect, but when you talk about being receptive, we've had people that didn't want to get in the chair and didn't think it was going to do anything and weren't really receptive. And I can tell have not gone to get any other type of therapy because of that too.
I just had somebody in my chair, Thomas, a week ago before I came up to Arizona, and he was been shot out of a helicopter twice, 4 knee replacement surgeries. Like when he sits down, he has to like turn around to help himself get up. The gentleman walked in, he basically like almost hobbled in, limped in. And I was thinking to myself, oh, God, I don't really want to put him in the chair with the frequencies because I just know he's going to be like, oh, well, yeah, this is cool, but my neck still hurts. And he couldn't even turn his neck around. And in 10 minutes, I gave him a beer, just sat him in there, let him relax, like, just relax. Let me play this for you. And I played it for him. And in 10 minutes, he freaking stood up without helping himself. And he walked to the other side of my room and started to kind of like dance around. He's like, this is new, people. And him and I were in tears because it's just stuff like this. I give chairs to so many people, Thomas. I am like, when I see somebody directly affected by this, it moves me in a way that nothing has moved me before. So it is a mission in my life that I make sure that I team up with the right people. And I so appreciate this opportunity to be on this podcast because these are the things that we need to be able to spread the word about the true effects of sound frequency in a different type of delivery system. So I really appreciate this. But yeah, it's
well, for the record, Dr. Drake put me in your chair. He asked me, what's your favorite song? I blurted something out and I cried like a child while I was in there for, the 5 minutes that my favorite pop song was playing.
It happens.
What that tells me is that the sound is acting on the nervous system, because nothing will respond as quickly as you're noticing. He's had his knee replacement surgeries, and you can bring down inflammation in the knees. And so that's
Right.
great. But if you're getting such a rapid response, what I'm hypothesizing is that it must be acting on the nervous system, not the
It is.
cartilage necessarily, but not other parts of the structure of the body.
Sure.
And I see you nodding like you're agreeing.
Yeah, there's a thing about that. So there's that speaks to the level of fidelity that you reproduce your sound at. So if you have a drum, let's say, so this, again, evolutionary biology, drums had a lot to do with human civilization in the beginning, and we're all tuned to it, whether we play the drums nowadays or not. We used to quite a bit, and it wasn't
Right.
for just entertainment either. It was to keep people, it was to keep your tribe safe. If the drums travel, we made drums that travel a long way. And when you hear that stuff, I don't know if you've ever lived on a small volcanic island where there's natives that tend to drum at night. And so you're laying there and you got the ocean going on. And
Chris, you got
hang on a second,
and you just
Chris.
hear,
let me just check my historical record. I have never lived on a small volcanic island.
Yeah, right.
So you simply must. Everyone must.
I missed
try
that
this.
field trip in elementary
Chris
school.
grew up in Hawaii, Thomas. That's
Yeah.
why he was able to.
So it drifts across, and you hear it at night, and it's a communicative thing. It says there are people here, and there's a bunch of us, and so leave us alone. Let us be. And that, when you hear it and you're part of that collective, it makes you, again, it goes back to the primitive safety. So your cell modalities must change when you hear these types of sounds. They're triggering your other receptors. There's sound receptors that are cognitive. And so when you do work like this, that's why we talk about fidelity being super important. It's not like it's just crappy, better, little better, really good, getting better, best. It doesn't work that way. There's a line by which everything under it, your body knows is not real. It's not a real drum. There is no safety. It's just your brain putting together some stimuli, and and you're just doing that. Then there's this line that if you can first record it and then reproduce it at a high enough fidelity, where you're capturing the full spectrum of everything that was going on, including third order harmonics, all of it. If you can really do that and reproduce that, your body says, oh no, there's a drum there. And your mind says, no, that's a speaker, man. And your body says, no, that's a drum and a bass player, and I like it. And your body will create this tug, this push and pull, this little tug against your cognitive. It'll go against what your brain is thinking, and it'll override it. Your right brain will take over, and it'll just be, no, it's drum time. And your body will do the things that would happen if there were really actually a drum there. Does that make sense?
Many of the examples that you've told me about so far are related to anxiety, and anxiety in different types. The patient had been shot out of the helicopter twice. It's likely that he's carrying unresolved trauma in his nervous system that leads to a very short trigger. That is, he's always just one little step away from an expression of anxiety. The child with the temper tantrums could also be rooted in a chronic high level of anxiety, which is typical of autism. And you mentioned, not just Asperger's on the spectrum, but a clinical diagnosis of autism. And then the Parkinson's patient, again, can be interpreted as someone who's locked up in their nervous system because of an anxiety that won't go away by itself. If I'm interpreting these three, if I've identified a pattern, then I would hypothesize that the chair works on the nervous system to release anxiety. I see you think I might be onto something with that hypothesis?
Well, 100%.
Music
Because
does. Yeah.
I would say that's probably the most use case of our chair to date is people with anxiety, both on the spectrum and not on the spectrum, but just anxiety alone. Just like I said, that comfort of that feeling of getting inside it, right there, just starts that release of like. It's like almost like a breath of fresh air. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
You definitely touched on on it.
So
Correct.
you can definitely measure and produce some effects by releasing gestalts, neurological gestalt, and so that's, or at least that's the way I learned it. And so that chain of firings, when you look at something like when I did 10 years of neurolinguistic programming with Chris Howard. Hey, Chris, how you doing, bud? Hey, you know, like that stuff was incredibly enlightening, because you got to see linguistically, and linguistics are just words, and words are sounds. So sounds from other people can have a definite effect on your mind. And when you do precision repatterning to release a gestalt, that's the same type of you lower your cortisol levels, you lower your adrenaline levels, you start to produce all sorts of other endorphins, and your cell modalities change. And that's just cognitive. That's just hearing someone say words. And so all sound is exactly what you're talking about. Guided meditations work so good because you're not, it's easier to record them and have your body think that they're real. A human voice is probably the easier thing to try to reproduce at a good enough fidelity level where you can lay there and listen to it. At some day, I'm going to do a historic fixing. What do they call it? You know, when you fix up old recordings. Of Alan Watts. You know, there's some great lectures and things from a long time ago, but the recordings themselves are so bad. And
those older ones,
yeah, and it'd be really great to go back and just sort of really get into the fidelity of lectures of Ram Dass and people like that, because then I think it would make it more accessible to more people contemporarily. Does that make sense? So the fidelity is everything.
It sure does. Then we need to take one more step, which is a little bit more speculative. Unresolved trauma, PTSD, complex PTSD, I believe it's held in the body. You can read Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score. You can read Peter Levine or Alice Miller. You can read...
Bruce Lipton was talking about that many years ago.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Bruce says in The Biology of Belief, Bruce says the cells of your body, they don't understand the difference between a signal that is created in your imagination and a signal that comes, you know, from whatever we're going to call reality. They are physical entities, and they must respond to that signal regardless of its origin. And so Bruce is really big on this idea that your thoughts will control your physiology. And he's making a materialistic argument for it. Also an energetic argument, but he's making a physical argument, not a spiritual argument for this, which makes sense because
he's a biologist.
Yeah, exactly. If we take this step and that we say unresolved stress, which manifests as trauma, is held in the body. We don't have to say, you know, that it's resonant in any particular place. One of the things that Bessel van der Kolk talks about is reliving that trauma from a position of control. So within a qualified therapist, in either talk therapy or improvisational theater, you would relive the trauma in play or in theater, which is not threatening, but you would do it from a position of control. And then this sort of trains the psychology, trains your psychology. I got this. I have confidence in this. If I'm ever confronted with this again, I know what I will do. You still have the memories, but they're not attached to the emotions. That's sort of the psychological approach. There are other approaches. Peter Levine's somatic healing approach, he does use talk therapy, but he says that he has seen people tremble to release the trauma from their body. And this could be, you know, I shiver in the ice bath. So it could be that sort of micro trembling. But it could be full-on body spasms. And he gives several accounts of his patients that have resolved a PTSD, a trauma, but released it from the body in an episode of trembling. The trembling, of course, is a vibration, just like shivering in the ice bath is. And I have reported, and other people have reported to me, that sometimes the shivering is coming from anxiety. It's not for thermogenesis. It's because your sympathetic nervous system has been activated. It brings some things up. It brings up these fears and anxieties, and you can shiver them out into the water, release them so that when you come out, you feel fantastic, confident, like you can take on the world. You have not talked through, you have not relived any aspect of whatever trauma or anxiety, whatever that source was, but you have released it through the vibration of your own body in the shivering and trembling. So this is the speculative leap. You, through entrainment, are causing a change in the frequencies inside the body. The tissues, whether it's fascia or the nervous system or anything that is controlling the communication from the nervous system to the rest of our cells. Through entrainment, you are governing those frequencies. And I think it's possible that you are physiologically doing a similar thing that Peter Levine is doing when he brings his patients through a trembling episode, or that happens in the ice bath when someone is shivering to release their anxiety. What's your reaction to that thought?
Well, there's a simple experiment that we could do right now if you want to, that would show.
We'll give it a try.
But this is and this comes from Bruce Lipton when I used to go to his seminars almost like that was 20 years ago. He's an amazing guy, and I think he pioneered most of what people are working on now in that space. The mind-body connection stuff from the point of view of a biologist. He's a fascinating character. The experiment is to smile really big, to give everybody a big smile, as big as you can. Now try to feel bad.
You can't do it.
You can't do it. Try to feel bad. Think of something horrible that makes you feel, oh, people died in New Orleans. That's really, really bad. But I can't get in touch with the feeling.
You're on the plane and you're getting anxious. You put a pencil or a pen between your teeth, and it forces, you're not even faking a smile. It forces your face into
the creases. As long as you put the creases back, you're doing it with forcing it with a pencil. Yeah, however you got to do it. But by putting your body into that modality, your mind follows. You can do that with music. You can do that with sound waves to specific parts of the body without going through your mind. You can do it through guided meditations and thoughts in your mind, as long as you maintain the lack of cognitive friction by reproducing it at a high level, so that your body can really think it's real. Like when you use MP3s to do guided meditations, or if you use an uncompressed wave file, or if you have someone really actually just sitting there in the room talking to you, totally different experiences. And everyone knows this, but you're trying your best to get these effects, and maybe you don't know why they're not as effective, but that's why. It's a very simple thing. And that comes down to how to do these things like cell entrainment, cell modality shifts, all of the biological functions that you want to affect. The key to tapping into that is through high fidelity. I sound like a broken record. Yeah,
I truly think,
again,
Thomas,
a trigger. There you go.
I truly think, Thomas, once the world has a better understanding on the effects of sound frequencies and what it can actually do, I think it's going to be one of the biggest things in biohacking. I mean, every day, every week, I'm seeing people with essential tremors and just all kinds of different neurology. A lot of it is neurologists. I don't see many people getting in there for any kind of muscle stuff, except for the muscle recovery, which has been our newest kind of studies that we've been doing.
Oh, if you have a broken leg, it'll heal faster if you stimulate the bone density by vibrating it. It's really just it's sort of just a Swiss Army knife, because like you said, our bodies naturally work on these types of frequencies and things that you find it in every part of it. To build on, to add to what Josh was just saying, I think something that is important with our app and with our methodology of applying this stuff, something that we have to tell everyone if they're listening. We've talked about not using MP3s and the difference. The thing that we're doing that we find why our software is a lot more effective than a lot of recorded media and other forms of even live things, because you can't do it. If you're doing it live, you really then need to still use a subwoofer and put it into someone's body at some decibel level that's going to penetrate, and the wave is really big, so the decibel can be really small and it'll go into your body and we can encode it. But our software is procedurally generating the sounds. It's not recording them and playing them back. And so when you run one of our apps, it's actually coding. It's the code running like a virtual synthesizer or something is producing the sounds. You're playing it. It's not a recording that's being sent back to you. And so it hasn't been digitized. It's coming out of your browser or your phone browser as a perfect sine wave that's mathematically correct. It has not been altered yet by any kind of digitized steps that you put in when you digitize things. And so that level of fidelity, playing a real keyboard in front of someone, is a lot different than recording it and playing them a recording of a keyboard. And so that's what makes this method. If anyone's doing this stuff, try to look in that direction for the things that you're working on, because we've noted it's an order of magnitude more effective.
And I think what you're saying is that you can't just use earbuds for this.
No, not really. I mean, even the tinnitus app. So we've got a tinnitus treatment on there. And normally with white noise, with tinnitus, if you use earbuds for that, it'll take a few hours. You really do anything effective with white noise, you've got to have it on there for half a day and then turn it off. And suddenly, oh gosh, it's gone. The ringing's gone. Like, you can get that effect, but it's tedious and most people don't do it. So I've been looking at how we can speed that up to 4 or 5 minutes instead of 4 or 5 hours. And that's the experiment. And by taking the frequencies, so in tinnitus, you can test your tinnitus frequency. Okay, this is where my ringing is. You match it, and then in our app, and then you go down and you play the white noise, and the white noise is now attenuated to the spectrum that you identified. And then I encode that white noise into a 40 hertz sine wave, and I oscillate it from 2 waves from 40 and 47, and I oscillate it down to 40, and I sweep through. So I get 0 to 7 hertz standing waves in a 40 hertz wave that goes through your body with the frequencies of the white noise encoded into it, so that your inner eardrum is actually experiencing the white noise. Not just like how the deaf people could hear the music in the chair, because it wasn't coming through their eardrum anymore. Their eardrum doesn't work. It's vibrating the surrounding tissue that the nerve is in and the bones in your ear. And so that was creating sound for them,
Was I able to tell you that story, Thomas, about the deaf people?
Tell me.
I had a quick meeting with the deaf people. LA Philharmonic was working with 3 deaf individuals at Center Staging in Burbank here, which is like a performance stage where if people come to concert here, they practice there first. Anyway, I got the email and I was blown away that I'm reading an email about 3 deaf people that want to meet me about my sound chair. It was just mind-boggling. So I got right on the email. I was like, hey, look, whatever time, I'll make it work. You just let me know. So I went down there. 2 of them were in the chair. They were crying, first of all. They said this was the first time they had ever felt like they had heard music.
Right.
Said that is way better than the sub pack. They have these like sub pack things that they put on. They said it's 100 times better than that. She said to me, there was a signer. She said to me that this is going to change the way deaf people game. And they asked me if I would make it a mission within my company to create hearing impaired sections at all the concert venues in the world.
Sure.
Since then, I've been talking to Live Nation. I have United Talent Agency. I have some really good people that are getting behind us, because now that's my mission. I have to make this. I have to make this happen. So that's just a whole other thing.
It sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it's like crazy that somebody that has the hearing loss or doesn't have any hearing at all could be affected by this. It's
And it tells us that the waves are penetrating into, and if you're listening to music, that's happening to you too. You just don't notice it because your eardrums work good. But you're also getting it inside your body and inside your head and stuff like that.
That's incredibly clever.
Thomas, thank you so much again for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. I really love what you're doing and how you're trying to bring awareness to all the right products that are out there in this world, because as you and I spoke about it, there's quite a bit of snake oil, but there's some really good modalities that are very effective. And we're so excited to be a part of this. And I just want to thank you again, man.
This has been my pleasure. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much.